Okay, you know that moment, right? Like a student raises her hand, asks you a question about the course content, and you know before the question is even finished that you don't know the answer. And in that moment, many things happen all at once. Your heart starts beating fast, your palms clam up, you're furiously racing through all your mental files to find something that relates, but you quickly realize there's nothing. That is one of the most terrifying moments that any of us has as a teacher, and I want to tell you what I think you should do in that moment. First, let me explain why that moment is so terrifying. Like, we stand at the head of the classroom as the teacher who is supposed to know what he or she is talking about. Not only that, but in our society, we talk about education as the sine qua non of the future flourishing of our nation. And you know, if that's the case, maybe they ought to pay teachers more. But yeah, anyway, that's a different video. Anyway, the point is we stand as teachers at the helm of this great national project of democracy and liberty, etc. And if we don't know the answers, our whole nation is going to fall apart. Additionally, on a slightly smaller scale, nobody likes to look like a fool, and that is especially true when you're standing in front of 35 judgmental teenagers who are ready to dismiss you at the first sign of weakness. But then to make things worse, the terror is compounded by this. You're not sure in the moment if this is a question you should know the answer to, or if it's just some random marginalia that only experts would know. Either way, you don't know, and that's a scary moment, so what do you do? Well, the most obvious thing you could say is the sheer unadorned truth. I don't know. But that does come with some problems, most significant of which is this. If it is indeed a question that is related to the curriculum and you probably should know it and you admit to not knowing it, then your students might lose confidence in their teacher, and your students need to have confidence in their teacher if they're going to feel like they can succeed. Like if a student asks, where's the Ottoman Empire again? And it's a pretty basic question, and you say, I don't know. That's kind of rough. I mean, that takes a teacher with unbelievable confidence just to admit that in front of their students, and I am not numbered among you. The alternative is that you could just try to answer and see what happens. Like maybe if you just start talking, the ideas will come. I remember clear as day in my first year teaching AP US history, which also happened to be my first year as a teacher, a student raised her hand and asked me what policies from Alexander Hamilton's presidency she needed to know. All of a sudden, panic struck me. Like, I knew that Hamilton was never president, but all of a sudden I'm starting to doubt it. Wait, was Hamilton president? You know, all of this is happening in a split second, and my nerves were not allowing me to think straight because I just didn't want to look like a fool. So I just started talking about the bank policy and debt consolidation, etc. Like, those are the policies you need to know from Hamilton's administration. And as I'm saying it, I'm like, I know Hamilton never had an administration, that everything I just mentioned was under Washington, but I honestly believe that in that moment, maybe I got that basic fact wrong. I mean, after all, Hamilton's on our money. Maybe he was president. That's when another student raised her hand and said as gently and respectfully as she could, Mr. Heimler, you know that Hamilton was never the president, right? That was a bad day. I literally thought my career was over and it had just begun. So I don't recommend just answering and seeing what happens. Like, it usually doesn't end well. And if your students learn by reading that what I said was not true, their confidence in their teacher, again, will drain away. And by the way, side note, if you have a story like that, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Okay, so what do you do when a kid asks you a question that you don't know the answer to? First, just know this happens to all of us, especially in the first few years of teaching, especially if you're teaching a course for which you were not properly educated. The hard truth is this: students are sometimes the casualties of our learning how to teach, and there is no other way. But second, I learned how to throw the question to the class. Like if it's something as simple as, where's the Ottoman Empire? Then I ask the students, okay, somebody tell me where the Ottoman Empire is. If nobody knows, I just tell them to look it up, and the first one to find it and tell everyone on what page you find the map gets some reward. But really, the best way to answer a question you don't know, I think, is this. Suppose a student asks you a more complicated question, like, how is the market revolution related to westward expansion? If you don't know the answer, don't say, I don't know. Instead, say, that is a very insightful question. I need to think about that, and I'll let you know. And then let them actually see you pause, write down the question, and then move on. And in that way, it affirms them for asking a good question, and you don't have to say something that will destroy the confidence that they have in you. I have a friend who, in her classroom, when a question comes up that she doesn't know the answer to, she just tells the students that she doesn't know, and then tells them that anyone who comes up with a good answer the next day gets a reward. But the thing is, if you're a first or second year teacher, you might not have the confidence to know which questions you should know the answers to and which are just marginalia. But if that technique works for you, hey, give it a try. Now listen, in a perfect world, we could just say to our students, look, I'm new to this. I was voluntold to teach this class a few weeks ago, and honestly, I'm only one chapter ahead of you guys, and I don't know the answer, but I will find out for you. And then the students would just think to themselves, wow, this teacher is new and seems willing to learn and grow in order to serve me, so I'll give him the grace that he needs to become the best teacher he can be. But you and I know that is patently not how students think, so maybe these techniques might help you keep the egg off your face. But let me hasten to add, there is no such thing as a teacher who has never had egg on their face, and so if you find it there, welcome to the club. All right, well, thanks for watching. If you have any stories about not knowing the answers to a question, let me know in the comments. This is gonna help all of us know that we are not alone, and that is very encouraging. If you want me to keep making these videos for you, then by all means subscribe, and I shall oblige. Heimler out.